Hi there, I'm Dr. Sam Roome, co-founder of Hello Bio. Today I'm with Rachelle Balez from the University of Wollongong in Australia, and we're going to talk about peer reviewing scientific papers. So let's make a start. Welcome, Rachelle. It's so lovely to speak to you in person after you've been such an amazing contributor to our blog for the last few years. If you could start by briefly introducing who you are, where you're based now, and what you're working on at the moment, that would be great.
So hi Sam and hi everyone. As you know, I'm Rachelle and I am currently a PhD student at the Illawarra Health and Medical Research Institute, which is based at the University of Wollongong. For those of you who don't know where Wollongong is, it's about an hour south of Sydney and it's a beautiful coastal city. So we can actually see the ocean from some of our research labs. It's a really great place to work. And for my PhD, I focus on Alzheimer's disease. And as most of us know, Alzheimer's disease is, of course, a neurodegenerative disease, and it tends to affect people in the later years of their life. And one of the big challenges for people who have Alzheimer's disease is they slowly lose their ability to remember, which then progresses into thinking and significant cognitive decline until eventually they pass away. And my Oma passed away 3 years ago now from this disease. So I'm really motivated to understand what's happening on a molecular level within the brain. That's of course one of the big challenges with Alzheimer's disease, is being a disease of the brain. You can't easily access human brain tissue, especially living human brain tissue, to understand what's happening during the disease's progression. So what I do in my PhD is I use induced pluripotent stem cells. So most people are familiar with the term stem cells. They're those incredible cells at the very start of life in the embryo, and they can grow into any cell type in the body. But there's a lot of ethical challenges with using embryonic stem cells. So induced pluripotent stem cells is a pretty novel technique where you can change an easily accessible cell, like someone's skin cell, into a stem cell. And then once we have a stem cell, of course, we can grow it into any cell type we like. So what I do is I take the skin cells from people who have Alzheimer's disease, I change them into stem cells, and then I grow them into brain cells, which gives me living human brain cells in a dish without having to cut any out of someone's head, so that I can understand the disease mechanisms and progression in a living human system.
Thanks, Rachelle. You recently wrote a guide to peer reviewing papers for the Hello Bio blog, and it was so popular that we wanted to dig a bit more into that today and talk about your personal experience. What was the first paper you peer reviewed, and how did the opportunity come about?
So I'd like to first of all shout out that thank you to you guys for publishing the blog piece, and also a shout out to Dr. Rebecca Sangill at the University of Queensland, who did her PhD down at IMRI, so where I currently am doing my PhD, and we co-wrote the piece together, and it was a really great experience, kind of bouncing our ideas and our experiences as young peer reviewers in writing that piece. So shout out to Beck, and thank you very much for publishing the blog piece. So to answer your question, my first peer review opportunity came about from a colleague. So a postdoctoral researcher, Dr. Martin Ingle, who used to work in our lab, he was reviewing for a journal, and they sent through a manuscript, and he recognized that it aligned quite nicely with my PhD field, so Alzheimer's disease, and looking at a certain receptor that I'm interested in. And rather than taking the review for himself, he sent me an email with the abstract and was like, do you think you'd be interested in reviewing this? If so, I can put your name forward to the editor. And after checking about how long it was what sort of a time commitment it would be on my behalf, I agreed to it, and he sent the email off to the editor, and then I was contacted by the journal. And this was a really great way, I think, to start peer reviewing, because I had already a kind of lined up mentor to help me through that process. So Martin had agreed to kind of hold my hand as I went through and check my work to make sure that I wasn't making any errors or any serious oversights. Yeah, so that's how my first experience came about.
So how did you feel about peer reviewing your first paper? Did you have any imposter syndrome issues? Was there any part of the process that you were particularly nervous about, for example?
100%. I had huge imposter syndrome, and I still do. It's toned down a little bit now because I can pick which papers or manuscripts I choose to review, and I make sure that they align with my field of expertise or within a knowledge bank that I know I can understand and work with. But that doesn't stop me from having, you know, those voices in your head and that anxiety of what happens if I miss a major oversight or flaw in the paper, or what happens if I'm too nitpicky, which is often a tendency of young reviewers, is you pick on all of the things because you're trying to, I feel like, prove yourself basically that you do know something. But to counteract that, I kind of think, you know, you're not meant to know everything and you're never going to know everything. And that's why they have multiple reviewers on a peer review process, because by working together, and again, that's why it's important to have a diverse section of peer reviewers, by having all of your different fields and knowledge and expertise come together, you should be able to get a cohesive whole that can successfully review and critique the paper.
Okay, so what would be your number one tip for someone who wants to get started in peer reviewing manuscripts but isn't sure how to find opportunities?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, because if I reflect back on my journey, I didn't know how to get started peer reviewing. I was really willing and wanting to, but I didn't know how to ask or who to approach. And if it wasn't for Martin approaching me and recommending me for peer reviewing, I don't think I'd be peer reviewing now. So I think my suggestion or feedback or recommendation would be is to let people know that you're wanting to peer review. Let your colleagues know, your supervisor, your peers. You never know who is reviewing and what opportunities may come from that. It might take some time for the right journal article or manuscript to come across, because you want to make sure it's within your area of expertise, not just for yourself, but also to make sure you're doing justice by the science and the work that the authors have done. But yeah, let people know that you want to peer review. There's also a lot of great websites out there that help train peer reviewers and will take you through courses, which you could then start approaching some of the lower tier journals to start that journey.
And finally, what would be the top piece of advice you'd give to someone who's new to peer reviewing and is feeling nervous or apprehensive about getting it right?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question as well. And I think it will probably differ for everyone. But my number one piece of advice would be give yourself time to read the paper and the manuscript several times. For me, when I approach peer reviewing, I will give the paper a quick read through and just jot down my initial thoughts. And then I might give it a day or two and I'll sit down with a big block of time and I'll go through it thoroughly. And that's where I'll pick up all those questions of, do I understand what this means? Have they missed something here? Do I need to now consult the literature to fill some gaps in my knowledge or really confirm that I think something is missing here? And then after that kind of deep dive into the paper, I'll then give it another couple of days and I'll come back at it with fresh eyes again, because you never know what you miss during those first couple of reads. And I think it's also important to, if possible, read the comments of the other reviewers that have looked at the manuscript. I always find it fascinating to see what I've missed, what others have picked up on, and it gives you a gauge of how you're progressing and if you're maybe putting in too much information or not enough.
That's fab. Thank you. Can you finish up by telling people how they can contact you or connect with you online if they'd like to?
Yeah, of course. So you can follow me on Twitter at Rachelle Balez. And I also have an Instagram account, which is Rachelle Balez. They're the main ways to kind of contact, or you can email me, of course, with any questions.
It's been amazing chatting to you, Rachelle. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.